Hi, welcome to the Gordox Pub, where Richard's camera is blank. Oh, there we go.
I just took the black bag off, you guys. Now you can see what I've been hiding. You just can't see the way to my secret lair.
There we go.
I've got
So
a
you said we
velvet.
need the velvet rope.
I was gonna say I've got a velvet bag for this camera, and when I'm
Wow.
done using it, I cover it up.
So you said we need to come up with a villain or an antagonist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming since part of this story is about getting the asset.
And that's sorry, you said that and it reminded me, but never mind. You go ahead and say something, and I'll put what I'm thinking in the private chat.
Okay. Well, so what the story then needs is someone who will be chasing the protagonist. It doesn't have to be like the absolute top bad person in the world, but just a pretty decent hunter guy.
What?
Oh, I'm just humming. Okay.
I just hadn't got very far into it yet.
So we're looking for an antagonist type character, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
probably several.
Well, okay. I just figured there would be. Well, I mean, you could have. It depends on how you want to go with it. Like you can have kind of like nameless minions chasing after the group, or you can have.
You can also have named minions.
Right. Well, we gotta
Anyway,
have the.
go ahead. Go ahead. I was just interjecting.
Well, I'm just saying. So I don't know if you want to go with like named characters or a named character that because I guess there's a spectrum there, right? You can have all basic stormtrooper types, or you have mostly stormtrooper, but you got your Boba Fett that's leading them, or you have just Darth Vader.
Oh, well, if you're using the Star Wars analogy, then you're missing generals, majors.
Well, no, I'm simply saying that you have.
Well, Grand Moff Tarkin was a villain in the first one, and as like I'm saying that you've got your bounty hunters, which is a different class. Those would be your mercenaries, right?
Right. What?
Then you've got your military establishment, or in this case, it may be a corporate establishment. We haven't gotten that far yet, right? Is it a military complex, or is it a corporate complex that employs military? We haven't gotten that far, so I mean, it's just things I'm thinking out loud.
Okay. I was just coming up with the type of, do you want an actual antagonist, or do you want to have,
Damn it.
Basically,
That was way off target.
nameless soldiers, or a mix of the two? I mean, like, that's, what do you feel like designing tonight? Because if it's because even the nameless soldiers have to have a look. Even if it's not 100% standard, you kind of want to have a.
Well, I think
aesthetic.
we've got that. That was the original sketch turned into a couple of soldiers, right?
Okay. Well, that's news to me, but I mean, that's cool.
That's what we were talking about last time, because we created a different look for the main guy.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't waste any of it.
Well, that's fine by me. I just didn't know that's what we were doing with it. So.
Well, and this this is not so small of a world that we can just say, "Oh, we've done one soldier, we're done." So, I mean, I'm by no means trying to start anything. I'm just thinking that we need a main bad guy for this story. I am not on target. I guess I'm needing a new target because this one is just not cut. Right now, what I'm doing is just laying out a grid to toy around with the cityscape a little bit.
Okay.
Because we need a whole lot of stuff, and we don't have really anything. And that's the point of this exercise, right? We're starting with nothing and creating everything pretty much as we go, so everyone can see how we do it, whether we screw up or whether we do really good on the first time.
Right.
We're not letting out all of our information all at once because
We also don't know.
story-wise, prose-wise, or whatever, you're not going to be able to actually read the story because that's not the way comics are put together. But you might be able to read the action because you should be able to tell what's going on in the story with the visual cues. And that's what makes sequential art different from other types of art, is to make it available so that you can read what's happening. Even if you don't know every little detail, you can get the gist of the story. Having bad luck with regular copy paper these days. Crinkling the hell out of it. Plus, I think Eli destroyed the hydraulics in this chair. I only use it for streaming, and he pretty much lives in it all the rest of the time.
Yeah.
And now it just doesn't stay up. So I'm way shorter on my desk than I normally am.
Huh.
To the point sometimes it actually hurts my shoulders because I'm having to lean pretty heavily. To get anything done. So what I'm doing is a 1-point perspective grid. It's simple. Anyone should be able to do it. I say should be, but for some reason I can't get all of them to line up in that perspective mark. This one is off too. The other one, it was just the vertical one that was off. Now it's just this one. Guess it just wants me to wreck the paper. I'm not wasting expensive comic board
Right.
on rough design. Trying to save that for the actual thing. All right. Let's try this again. Please try this at home. You'll probably do better than I will. And the ruler slid. Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
However, I got that mofo right in the middle. After all that work. Now I just got to do it 8 more times.
Oh, hey. So do you want a male or female protagonist? Or other?
Oh boy. That's
well, I mean, technically a robot.
That's interesting. We could do robots. We could do aliens. There's no limits.
Well, that's why I said
we
other.
We didn't limit ourselves, but I have a hard time honestly seeing a sex other than male and female unless it's asexual, like can reproduce on its own. And yeah, you covered that also with artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
But that's also asexual. It's just a different way.
It's one of the problems I had writing an artificial intelligence character. I was like, why am I calling this thing female? It's
right?
Not. Gave it a female name, and I was like, it should not. Like, this is dumb. But I mean, it's a common thing that you make your artificial intelligence male or female, even when they're not male or female. But oh well.
Well, honestly, damn, did it again. I think maybe this is because I'm using this not very fine tipped pencil. I'm trying to line it up with the ruler, and it's not setting right on the line with the ruler. So, you say, what do I want? But it's our material, right?
Well, I know, but like, I mean, I have no problem saying, what do you want? And if it sounds good, saying, all right. Or if it doesn't sound good, saying, we need to work on that.
Yeah. But, it's easier for me to say, like, if you got some thoughts, just tell me what your thoughts are.
Well,
you know what? I'm going to try it this way.
And also, I mean, because, you wanted a single protagonist for the most part. Like you wanted to limit the number of characters, and like those are considerations I had not had.
Okay.
So that's why I always ask, well, what do you want?
There are reasons for wanting fewer protagonists.
Oh, I know. And I'm
okay. I'm not saying I'm not trying to be facetious about it. I'm actually trying to maybe get into that so that other people will understand.
Okay.
Because remember, this is a forum. This is a public event. We chose to make it a public event.
All right.
It may not have been the wisest decision to start off with. We might have wanted to come up with a couple of things before we decided to make it public.
Makes it real.
Yeah, it makes it something.
Real shitty. But
So, Well, it makes it real work, I guess.
Yeah, it does.
Not, not to say that it's not real work, because I'm pretty sure that even as fun as it can be, it's still going to be real work. It's sometimes anyway.
Yeah.
Even at its funnest point. So, what I'm thinking about is the reason that I wanted fewer protagonists are
Yeah.
that A, we can focus on one person's story, which is easier than trying to figure out a whole bunch of separate crew members and friends. Not to say that there won't be more characters making appearances in the story. I think that was one of the misunderstandings that we had, is that even in the Punisher, you've got Microchip,
Right.
you've got other characters that are important to his story.
Or they're reoccurring characters, but not necessarily there every time.
Right. Well, no, I mean, like once Microchip was there, he pretty much was there until they decided to make Microchip his enemy, which is Marvel being stupid again. Because Microchip had a reason. He was a crusader. There's a reason behind why he was supporting the Punisher and being a part of that. And it's like the Punisher has a reason for what he's doing, right? He didn't just jump into it one day and go, okay, I'm going to just hunt down mobsters. He lost his family to mobsters, right?
Right.
He had been a Vietnam vet. He had been intended on becoming a priest. So when you take that away, and that's what they did, by the way, that's how they killed the Punisher. They raised his wife from the dead, or supposedly, and then she told him not to do what he's doing and all this other shit. So I'm sure, after so long of being in that place where you're killing every mobster you can see, that you're just gonna go, oh, okay, and not suspect some trick after all the things that he'd been through.
Wait, so you're telling me he listened to his wife? That's unbelievable.
Well, she was dead.
No, I was.
Kind of like the Crow.
Kinda. All right. Anyway, so.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that he's gonna live in a vacuum, because I want to make it a single focus. But he's definitely going to be the only one pretty much in the field, unless he needs backup. Yeah, he can call for backup. Yeah, there are others. Part of the game plan, part of the backup plan. That's stuff that we still have to figure out yet. As far as villain goes, well, we know what the objective of the protagonist is.
Yeah.
So that's a starting point, definitely. If it's a true antagonist, the true antagonist is going to try to stop that from happening, right?
Right.
And who's got the most to lose or gain in that equation? So now we need to make a decision. Right, and you're thinking, now we need to make a decision? Yeah. So this whole process is a series of decisions for those who are uninitiated. So we need to make a decision whether it's a company thing or a military thing, because that will give us more direction and help create some of what our villains' motivations are. And obviously, greed's a motivation, but it doesn't have to be the primary motivation. So, what do you think?
Well, I think at this point, for this particular story, I would have it be the government of whatever city-state we're going for.
So you want it to be military?
Yeah.
Basically. I mean, you're, without getting hugely political, that's pretty much the option we have. If we're gonna get political, that's different. But I prefer to stay away from common politics, right?
Right. I mean, to some extent, we kind of have to have a structure that we figure out. We said city-states. Okay, how do they interact with each other? Are there, if they're technically they should all be independent then, but I'm sure some probably agree with others.
Yeah, allies.
Yeah, a simplistic view of things would be like NATO versus the Warsaw Pact. So you have your Western aligned city-states, and you had your Russian aligned or Soviet aligned countries or city-states, whatever. But, I mean, it's a simplistic view, but we kind of have to figure out some of that stuff so we know how to design our characters. And for right now, I think it would be better, whatever this particular city-state is, which that, God, it looked like you had freakishly small hands. Anyways. Sorry, I was just distracted by the way that your hand looked freakishly small on my screen. Which is odd, because it's probably larger than life size. Yeah. Anyway. We need a bad guy, and it's easy to have a military, a government with that runs everything, a dictatorial fascist type thing. It's an easy villain. Later on, we can play around with things, but it's a necessary thing. For right now, I would just go with, it's a kind of an evil empire city-state type place, or an evil North Korea type place. So, I don't think it's the bigwigs that are doing this. And I don't know how many resources, again, we said this is somewhat you have your city states, but in between is pretty much Badlands. So for this particular city state, would they have, I don't know, people to go out and hunt for them? Which I kind of like as a character design.
So you really want to kind of design some underlings and not the main bad guy.
Well, I don't think this is a conflict with the main bad guy, in that.
You don't?
Well, no, not exactly. I mean, we're talking about extracting an asset, and when you think about that, it was, my mind automatically goes to spy movies, and it's not like it was the head of the KGB that went and tried to find you if you were an American spy or extraction agent, whatever. But it's not the leader of the country that hunts you down. It's somebody's underling who's somebody's
underling. The leader
underling.
of the country sets you into motion. The leader of the country sends people after you.
But I don't see him as being out in the field.
Decisions. Or there is an agency head.
I'm just saying, I don't want to, for lack of a better term, I don't want to Captain Kirk this, where it makes no sense the captain's leaving the ship every episode. Or the bad version of Captain Kirk, whatever. So instead, you need to.
Okay, so being the main bad guy and being the one that actually hunts him down are not necessarily the same thing.
Well,
I think that's where we're having a disconnect, because I don't think you have to if you're the main bad guy, you don't go out in the street and hunt people down.
Right, but I didn't think this was going to be a story big enough to include necessarily the main bad guy. It would be
somebody started this ball rolling. I mean, somebody that's not a tracker or whatever.
Yeah, I understand that, but does he necessarily show up on the page?
Well, yeah, I think he would show up on the page. He may not have a prominent role.
Okay, so I was trying to figure out the prominent characters.
But you still have a main bad guy. You still have a shot caller.
Okay.
He may not show up. The back of his head may show up. He may pound his fist and say, "I'll get you next time, Gadget." But
yeah. Well, that's fine. It's just
the thing is, we need to know where he's coming from, and because he's probably going to make. I say he, but just because that's the standard go-to for a guy is a he. But yeah, what I'm thinking is that that person may not be the physical opponent, but it's the opponent. And if that person is in charge, they're not going to stop with just one attempt. See what I'm saying?
Right.
So we might be following, for instance, Jaws or Tattoo when Goldfinger or Scaramanga or whatever is still calling the shots, right?
Right.
And what I'm saying is, if we know who our overall bad guy is and what their motivations are, the underlings, their motivations are simpler. Unless there is a personal element, which we could do, it's their job, so they're doing their job, right? It's like
Right.
if your protagonist is a murder detective, he doesn't need motivation on why to solve the crime. That's what his job is. If you can find a stronger motivation for him, that's better. But it's still not really required.
Well, I just
So when you talk about the underlings, that's what I'm thinking about the underlings is that when you talk about the underlings, they don't have to have an overarching motivation. Like, we're not creating the Punisher and Jigsaw. So when Jigsaw started as an enemy for the Punisher, he was a member of a crime family. The head of that crime family was the enemy of the Punisher. That's like the Russian, when you see the Tom Jane movie, the Russian that's beating him, he's wearing the striped shirt. That's an actual character in the Punisher. And he works for Magnocchi. So the ultimate villain is Magnocchi, even though she employs the Russian, and the Russian is a pretty badass killer. So, guess what I'm thinking is that I was thinking of working from the top down instead of working from the middle outward.
well, that's kind of what I do. I tend to focus on what is the protagonist doing, and then, I mean, it's a challenge of the protagonist. That's ultimately what an antagonist is. And I get that there is a bigger fish element. I just wasn't sure how much you wanted to design that may not ever end up actually on the page.
Well, we don't have anything to work with right now, so we don't know what's going to end up on the page.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just saying, it's the more we know, the better, right? The audience doesn't necessarily need to know what we need to know. The one good thing about 1 point perspective is that all the verticals and horizontals are vertical and horizontal. You don't have to worry about them meeting up to different vanishing points. So I watched a little bit of the Gina Carano Scorched Earth movie.
I have not seen that. Nor do I know what you're talking about. So
We talked about it. It's a post-apocalyptic Gina Carano movie. We talked about it on stream, but it's you're not really missing anything. There's a reason I only watched part of it.
Scorched Earth from 2018. Well, I haven't seen it. And we talked about this.
We only grazed the subject because I had only just heard about it.
Oh, well, okay. That would...
And then I said, just now, I just watched a little bit of it.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
I watched like 20 minutes, a half an hour, and that was enough. Unfortunately.
It does not look that good.
Nope. And I was trying to give it the benefit of the doubt because, like, I really enjoyed Cyborg, the original Cyborg.
Yeah.
With Van Damme. It wasn't that great of a movie, but, I enjoyed it. So I gave it the benefit of the doubt, hoping it would be something like that. Needless to say, it did not turn out to be what I was thinking it was going to be. I don't, honestly, after watching 20 minutes of it and seeing the premise,
yeah,
I don't understand why they called it Scorched Earth.
Because it sounded cool.
Well, so here's a quick reason why that will spoil nothing because it's in the first couple of minutes of the introduction info dump. Okay.
Okay.
So the there's no scorched earth. The abuse that people gave the planet. Eventually, the ice caps melted all at once very quickly, caused these storms where it's raining acid rain, black death, whatever. But the two commodities are fresh water and breathable air. So you're using special kinds of linen filter systems.
Okay.
So basically, everyone's running around with blackened teeth except for Gina Carano and the guy that played the brother-in-law in The Mummy.
Okay.
So,
yeah, now I know. We did talk about that. Just a little bit.
So I thought I would be a friend and save you.
Save me the hassle.
Yeah, from wasting that much of your life. Which is a damn shame because, you know, I was hoping that things would pan out for her. I think they tried to kind of make it a female version of Cyborg a little bit. She's a bounty hunter. She's a bounty hunter instead of a swinger, but yeah, it's not really good.
Did you watch? I think you have. 'Cause I think we've talked about it. But have you seen the Disney Moon Knight show?
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you remember? Spoiler alert for anyone who's not seen the show. That came out like last year or the year before.
It doesn't matter. Spoiler alert for anyone that's not seen the show.
Yeah. But when they're in the psychologist or psychiatrist, I don't remember what he is, in his office, is that white room, and it looked like there were like it's a modern style, but it has remnants of old building in it.
Yeah.
That are kind of held in there.
See that quite often.
Or, as another example, remember in Gargoyles when they put the castle on top of the building in New York? So you have this melding of the really old with really modern. Only reason why I'm saying these things is because I think that's a cool architectural style. And
I think a lot of that is just Art Deco. Kind of Art Deco, maybe Art Nouveau, but mostly Art Deco.
Sorta. Except for when you can literally see where like the old building was crumbling, and so they have to like join that part to the more modern part.
So you're really not talking about the architecture. You're talking about how they patch something up.
Well, that is a style, though. I mean, it is definitely something where you've got something that obviously was crumbling, and they save as much, but then they don't try to rebuild it per se. They just, or this wall fell down, so you put a modern wall in its place, even if it's just a patch in between two crumbling sections. So you shore up the part that's crumbling, so it's not crumbling anymore. And then you add modern materials, and you make no attempt to hide the fact that part of this is really, really old, and part of this is really, really new. What?
That would be patchwork.
Okay.
You can see that it's patched.
Yeah. I mean, some of the things with the city-states, and like you're talking about, designing protagonists and antagonists and things, and if the antagonist is running has a military, then you're kind of thinking about what's the connection to the city-state. How does the city represent kind of the villain? How do you represent this? Oh, this is a bad city-state versus this is a good city-state, that type of thing. So I don't think that kind of architecture is good for...
That's not what I was thinking, that there would be a good or bad city-state. That's actually political. I was thinking of the elements that would be in any city-states. That being people and greed and...
Yeah, but if you have
there's different motivations, obviously, but...
I mean,
I'm sorry,
again,
what? If you
have a city-state that's a dictator fascist type military complex, I suppose that's political, because I'm saying I don't like fascists or dictatorships, but beyond that, we're not saying this.
Political. That's absolutely political. How are you going to represent those fascists or whatever?
Well, I wouldn't recommend ever representing fascists in a generally good light.
Okay, so I don't give a fuck about the light. That's not what I'm talking about. That's a sidetrack. How are you going to represent them?
That kind of depends on how you design things.
No, right. That's the opposite way around. I design them based on how you represent them. Before we have a big disconnect, like, what are you picturing as fascist? Because nowadays, everybody pictures something different as fascist.
I would argue it's a government.
That's a throwaway term anymore. Anyway, you're saying?
So, I mean, again, if you go with the strict definition of a government that generally is held, the centralized around one person usually, and which is unaccountable to the populace. Um, that's pretty much a fascist state.
So
You know,
you're thinking dictatorship?
well that tends to be how it's run.
Well, like I said, some people don't call that just strictly fascist, or some people call other stuff fascist as well. That's not clearly not a dictatorship.
Yeah, and
So
no
I'm
matter what
asking,
you do, though, is you're going
when,
to.
when I ask how you want to represent it, a dictatorship is the short answer. And that would have been a simple enough answer where I could have been okay and then moved on. So I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to clarify. And that is political. And I'm not saying I'm defending fascists. That's not even close to what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I wasn't looking at it as in, oh, we're making a Stalinist fascist state or a Hitler-esque state so that we can have an automatic set of bad guys. And I'm just thinking in terms of so if you look at the architecture of Stalin's period in Russia,
Mm-hmm.
and you look at the architecture of Hitler's reign, you'll see that the buildings are cold and utilitarian.
Mm-hmm.
They are boxes, they are pillboxes, they are not meant to be in any way aesthetically pleasing. So if we're talking about a dictatorship like that, we already have separate examples that show us that they want it simple and plain. I think it's more than just a monetary thing. It's so that you can set it up easier, less hiding places like bus crooks and nannies, or nooks and crannies, less inspiring to the imagination. They are trying to get a certain aesthetic that helps them control the populace. Do you understand why I'm asking?
You haven't asked anything. You've simply stated things.
No. That's what I asked you. Is the beginning was, what are you thinking of fascists? How are you going to represent fascists? And then it was like you think I didn't understand what the actual definition of fascist is. But what I'm talking about is, how is it going to be done? How is it going to be represented? Are they all going to be wearing military uniforms? Are they going to be, smartly dressed where everybody's going to have knee-high riding boots and click their heels when somebody walks by? Are they going to have caps? Are they going to have helmets? How are you going to represent that? Because the Empire in Star Wars wasn't originally fascist. It became fascist. So when I'm asking this kind of stuff, it's not to draw you out of or into anything. I'm just looking for information. I have to represent this artistically. When I talked about creating a bad guy, a villain, antagonist, and a main antagonist, I wasn't thinking of government being the main antagonist. I was thinking the person behind what's being stolen. I was thinking a more personal connection to the story. But you clearly had a different vision, and we weren't discussing the vision. So, like when you're talking about being fascist, am I drawing this buildings all wrong? Do I have to start again and start with like more square structures, more colder lighting scenarios, barricades in the streets? You know, these are all factors to how we're quote unquote filming or framing the shots or whatever. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay. I just want to be clear.
I'm also trying to figure out. Currently, I'm not getting anything on Twitch. But anyway,
Yes, we're on Twitch.
Right, but I'm not.
Yeah, it says we're live on Twitch. No, I'm just checking. Because when you said that, it makes me want to check.
Oh. Well, that's why I was.
We're live on YouTube also.
My computer's making it a little. I don't know. Anyway, the reason why I was trying to pull it up on Twitch because it's a bigger screen. And it's just being so amazingly slow.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot here yet, so that's what I'm saying though. Is like this is a good point to know what I'm drawing, to know what I'm designing, because I was designing sort of a futuristic. Like I said, my resources were tapping into like the Fifth Element and Blade Runner 2049, these types. Actually, even some of Star Wars, because that's also some inspired by Sid Mead, which I can't imagine doing something futuristic without, you know, having some influence from Sid Mead. Yeah, it's not like I'm trying to lead you into a trap or something. I'm just trying to make the design fit what we're talking about. Because once, you know, like you were saying, once you have something you visualize, then it kind of solidifies it, right?
Right.
I mean, I suppose we could do all this work to do like Mike Hoffman and build a maquette of the city or the particular parts of the city we want. But that's a lot of work because we're basically building a cardboard movie set.
So, I think you're leaning more cyberpunk than I was, which is fine. It's I think there's
Hmm.
there, just with some of the design elements that you've done, which is fine by me because I mean,
What are the design elements besides pipe and louver? Because I've got one pipe and some louvers right here.
well, if you look at
This is actually going to be a light, like a sign.
right, but I'm
This is
saying
going
that
to
if
be lights. Just saying, because I know from the lines you're not going to get all of this until there's something to reference.
okay,
But so let's see if I can make this a little bit easier. If I was doing, say, a more fascist environment, like picturing what we were talking about, they would be simpler, less imaginative structures. I guess that would be there. Trying to remember how to do this.
Uh,
Well, there's a trick. I mean, even keeping it simple, there's a trick. So I have to move that there. So this is basic and utilitarian. Little figures in there for scale, so.
Have you ever seen the pictures of the Korean Peninsula at night? Rich,
Yeah.
have you ever seen the pictures of the Korean Peninsula at night?
I may have.
Where, like, North Korea is dark for the most part, and South Korea is lit up, something fierce.
Okay.
Well, it tends to show. It's often used to show the a good laboratory experiment because the North had, a fascist regime, and the South did not, and you can see, which is doing better in a pretty quick glance. But the reason why I bring it up is I get that the Soviet Union could have these big blocky buildings that are soul crushing because they're ugly as sin.
And it's not just the Soviet Union.
I know, but we also talked about this being somewhat post-apocalyptic. That's why it's in city-states. So,
yeah, but still, fascist builders are going to build fascistly.
I agree with that. However,
we have a comment.
Like,
the
idea.
Gaming. Hey, I don't know what that says, but hey.
Oh, skibbity toiled. This is what happens when I'm looking at Twitch instead of looking at
yeah, I don't know what that says. So.
Skibbity toiled.
I don't know what that. Okay, I don't know what that means.
Neither do I. Maybe Gandalf Gaming will let us know.
Maybe.
But the reason why I bring it up is because I like those buildings look super sturdy, and I think that's great. For if we want to throw a post-apocalyptic aspect into this, you might. Those buildings might be there, but then at the same time, if they don't have a lot of electricity, if farming has become more difficult, so they've had to,
Okay, well, hold on a second now. We're talking about advanced technologies, and that's not going to happen when there's no electricity.
Well, think of it this way. I would say that there is electricity. I just don't know if there'd be as much electricity. As in, the means of production might have, be curtailed.
In a fascist state, the
Yeah.
electricity was be curtailed to the military complex or whatever they're advancing.
Well, yeah, the military part would, but what about all the parts of there's more than just the military. So, wouldn't it make sense that you'd have one area, the military aspects, that are great, and the other aspects, which are so amazingly not great, like you'd be able to quickly tell where the resources go. They go towards the military, and they don't go towards the people.
Well, I wouldn't say don't. I would say they go towards the objective first.
Okay.
Well, I know that sounds like it's splitting hairs, but it's not. I guess what I'm saying is that you still have to have people to work. You still have to have people to. You still have a reward system. Even in a fascist state, when you think of fascist state, those that were rewarded were those that basically were the kiss asses of the highest up.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that there's not different states, different classes, I guess. And with the different classes, there would be a difference in resources. I don't know. Like we're we're not very far into this right now, and it seems like we're dancing back a step every time we get a little bit further into it. We don't know how many different city-states there are at this point in time. We know of 2, possibly 3 for current purposes. And they all need designed. And true, there's going to be different parts of each city because no city is the same through every part. Generally, the east side is different than the west side, than the south side, depending on what city. And that's just in the bigger American cities. But when you say fascist state, it makes me think that they would, all their surviving architecture, all the architecture that they had, they'd be focused on putting electricity into where people would be living, would be very utilitarian. Even if it was poor, it's still going to be very utilitarian. And the commonalities from dictatorships lead me to believe that that's a truism. Do I think that there wouldn't be any houses or whatever? No, but most for example, most Russian Cold War pieces or East German Cold War pieces, and most of what we have, we're not talking comic books, we're talking movies, because that's what mostly there is. That and photos. So, but besides real history, documentaries, and films about it, they're still very cold behind those lines. After the bombing, when they rebuilt in East Germany, they still rebuilt cold. After Stalin took over, I think pretty much after Lenin took over, they started doing cold structures. It was very plain. They wanted you to focus on what you were doing for the state and not what you wanted for you. And I think that's part of the mentality of a fascist state. So, and now I get to ask the next question. I was picturing the city-states would be in the remains of pretty much the U.S. because that's pretty much where I am and that's pretty much what I know, except for, history, documentaries, and films. But I wouldn't, pretend to know what it was like to live in those places enough to try to figure out how it would have progressed in 100 years or 50 years or whatever the time period is that we're talking. Like we were talking, Mad Max is pretty much set in Australia, so it has the Australian aesthetic, Australian feel, the red dirt, the mud, the dry, everything except for the ocean. But that director, those actors, that's what they knew. We didn't actually discuss where we are, what we're doing. We just said, these are city-states. Well, then we have to figure out where these city-states are. Because, and for instance, as you were saying, if you want to show patchwork buildings, which I don't know how much I want to fight with that, but if you want to show patchwork buildings, I have to know what the architecture looked like before it was patched. It's going to be different if you're going into England, Scotland, Iceland, Russia, Romania, Italy, Spain versus America, well, the United States, Canada, Mexico. That even just these three countries that are connected on our continent can be vastly different. So it's a legitimate question of what the area is if we're not going to just go all out post-apocalyptic sci-fi and nothing that remained before remains now.
No, I thought we were doing more. Well, it depends. If it's post-apocalyptic, you kind of question whether it'd be New York, because I'm assuming that'd be wiped off the face of the planet pretty fast.
Depends on what the apocalypse.
Well, I know. So,
for instance, scorched earth is nature getting back at us.
Yeah. Because humans have never proven themselves to be more adaptable than nature, but hey, whatever.
Hey, I didn't write the movie.
I know.
But I'm just saying that is a predicted apocalypse. Like, whether I agree with it or not, that doesn't matter. People don't give a shit whether I agree with it. They're gonna still think green is right and everything else is wrong if they want to, you know. I think there's too many variables to just say, oh, it's going to be nuclear war, or oh, it's going to be a major cataclysm, or it could be all of that kind of stuff. Could be a little bit of all of it.
I don't think we have to pin. Here's what I would say. This is far enough in the future that even if you had a place like New York that survived, you wouldn't recognize it as New York. More than like whatever's there is so wildly different than what's there now.
That would be a hard thing because New York has some very staple architecture that's been around for a long, long time.
Yeah,
but same thing with Boston. It's got certain architecture that's been around since pretty much before the country's been around. There are things like I'm sure you've seen like The Day After Tomorrow, right?
Yep.
And you can recognize the New York Library Lions. That's just part of the landscape. That's a landmark that you might be able to break a lion's head off or whatever, but you'd recognize that. I mean,
yeah, but those lines are pretty much exactly what you're going to see like outside of the Art Institute of Chicago. So
not the same though.
You know, saying that there are lions and saying that's definitely New York. Maybe it is New York. And maybe we play around with it. That's fine. But you don't have to have it be New York. And I mean, if whatever it is that there are city-states now instead of actual countries, and most of the things in between are pretty nasty, then some of the maintenance stuff, I mean, you're going to have a consolidation of resources, a restriction of trade, and I'm going to guess some detriment in tech and communication, whatever we have. So, you know, trying to say that it has to be like this skyline, I mean, I'm also thinking about you. Like, this what allows you to pull from any place you want to. And if we want to say, all right, this building is there, and, you know, they built something that looks like this, and it looks a lot like, I don't know, the Eiffel Tower, because that's pretty pretty obvious, but there are Eiffel Towers. There's an Eiffel Tower in Las Vegas. So, I mean, some of the stuff we can play around with as much as we want. As for architecture, for I don't know how much you want to get into the 100% nuance at the beginning with all city states are equal, which is also a political stance. And so I just...
Well, first of all, I wasn't feeling that. We hadn't explored any of this yet.
I agree. So I'm just...
What I'm saying is that if we're going to do a dictatorship, the architecture will reflect it. It will.
Okay, so
and I'm not saying it has to exactly look like Russia, or it has to exactly look like China, or it has to exactly look like whatever. I'm just saying that there are going to be certain architectural design elements that are made for control purposes.
Okay, but
just
Havana.
Like what?
Havana.
What do you mean?
Well, Havana is run by a dictatorship.
Havana is a city in Cuba.
Yeah.
It wasn't always a dictatorship. They took control of what was there existing.
Mm-hmm. So,
and is it its own country right now, or is it an annex?
Well, Havana? It's part of Cuba.
Yeah, Cuba. Is it an annex, or is it its own country right now?
It's its own country.
Okay.
And you can look at what happens when it's, part of the reason it looks the way it looks is because, the U.S. embargo, while they have, really old cars and their buildings are all relatively old looking, and, they don't get a bunch of stuff because we don't let them.
Because they're poor. And that's a little bit different because you've got to make do with what you got to make do.
And that's what I would think a post-apocalyptic type thing would kind of be like. You have to make do with whatever you can get.
Except for where we're talking about plot-wise has an advancement in technology.
Well, that's why
that's not gonna be a third world country that invents that. They may discover a hybrid type of thing. Okay, so very squared off. This is Havana. There's very minimalist in everything, and it's what survived. So I guess what I'm saying in that is that you can tell that doesn't look like it's a cultured state. That doesn't look like it's an advanced technology. That doesn't look like it's I don't know. It looks like they have not advanced anything, or it's very, very repetitive. And what you're talking about, the structure, the city structures that you're looking at, this is old Spanish structures. There's not a whole lot of room to tear down and build, new square structures. Let's see. Yes, what I'm seeing is for government buildings, it's basically a copy of the U.S. or very square buildings.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's perfectly fine. Uh,
But
I'm simply saying
that's what I
there's a
was
lot
saying. Like I don't get what the discrepancy is when I'm trying to say that overall
because most of
there's
the buildings are not government buildings.
in a dictatorship or in something
In
that just
Havana,
conquered something. Well, there's an exception to all rules, right? But the government buildings are very square. And you just said that the villain of the story is going to be the government. And you said it was a fascist government. So what
huh?
we're talking about is what's going to be taken, where it's going to be taken from, and that's all relevant to what I'm talking about. Like I don't see the discrepancy. Why would why would you do a lot more? Why would you do a lot more details on something that if they rebuilt, they're going to rebuild the cheapest, simplest way possible anyway. I just I don't see the discrepancy in that. For me, what I was designing was when we first started talking about it, we first started talking about doing this particular place as similar to Blade Runner. And we were talking about, yes, there will be multiple city states in multiple states of wealth, repair, population. They would all have enough to defend themselves from somebody else that's trying to conquer them. Or they would all have something special that they could rely on. Otherwise, there would be less city states already. So these would be basically the surviving conglomerates of city states. I'm not trying to make things difficult. Once again, I'm trying to get some clarification for what I'm trying to design. And you're talking about things like patchwork on buildings that take old architecture with new architecture. When the new architecture you're talking about is lower technology than the old architecture. So what would that look like? I would say it would be the simplest possible fill that you could make. Unless it's a very wealthy place. That is how I imagine it would look. Let's see, what the hell was I just thinking about? Crap. Oh, that's what I was thinking about. So there's also another aspect if you're using the Art Deco. And I'm not just talking about like the Empire State Building. There's a couple of them that have statues that are pretty much built into the buildings. These are Art Deco elements. I want to say there's some in like Prague. I could be wrong. Yep, that's not the one. Now, a lot of these buildings, they still have a squared off look, but they have patterns to them. It's going to drive me nuts. Ah, there's one. Oh, that's figures. That's going to be too small. You'll see a whole bunch of these with eagles and stuff too if you really wanted to look.
Yeah, I know.
This was in Singapore. And that's another thing too, is the Singapore example is a good example that there are also going to be cultural pieces to the architecture too. Like the designs behind that statue, they were cultural pieces. Thought this was going to be easy, just setting it up and doing a city scene.
Okay, so well, that's just fun. Ultimately, what I was trying to get at was that uh, because they're city states, you don't got to be boxed in with any kind of particular design. Because we have all varying levels of technology for all varying reasons. We said this is going to be an evil place, whatever it is. So, I said fascist dictatorship, that type of thing. But that's and I don't want you to think that you have to get Soviet on that. I mean, you can. Don't get me wrong. That's the thing. You can't. We could go those routes. I have no problem with any of those. I just don't want you to be boxed into thinking you have to go a certain route because the Soviets did it this way or the Chinese tend to do it this way. And all modern architecture from all kinds of places. I think it's mostly postmodern. The big boxy blah that was terrible. U.S. did it. Soviets have done it. I mean, every country's done it. I think we're getting away from it now, thank God. But it's one of those things where I don't think you have to worry too much about it. So when you're asking me how would I represent that this is a fascist country, I look at whatever that place is in Mad Max with Immortan Joe. That's a fascist state. It doesn't have any particular architecture that screams fascist state, but it is one. So whatever. If you want to give a nice, solid Blade Runner vibe for this particular story, go with a solid Blade Runner vibe. I mean, honestly, I keep trying to make sure that you're not pinned down. Like, I'm trying to make sure that I'm not saying, I want it this way, this is how it should look. Like, there are certain aspects that I know I will kind of push for, but I don't necessarily, like, if it's just like, when I was talking about the blend of old with new, which, again, I would look at as my examples of those things. I think it's the Eyrie Castle or something like that in Gargoyles, and or the Ire or something. I don't remember. And yeah, the psychiatrist's office in Moon Knight, because that's not just a drawing, that's a real world physical space. So that was kind of an interesting, I thought that was kind of a neat thing. But that doesn't have to be something that we use on the evil city. It doesn't have to be something that we even use in the good city. It's just something that later on, if you want to play with, that's an aesthetic that I have enjoyed. But getting beyond that, if the things that I would want out of the evil city would be a strong military presence, which could just be flags, honestly, or flags and military vehicles. So that's kind of where I'm at. And when you were talking about character design, and I was trying to figure out, all right, we're going for the big bad versus the more involved one, for lack of a better term. Part of it's because I don't want to pin us down when I don't necessarily know if the story needs it. I would think the more pressing character is the one who's more on the page. Like, that would be the one I'd want to worry about first. But that's just kind of my thought process on all that. So one of the things I like about what we currently have for this design with city states is that I'm kind of think of it as the Thundar model, where, you know, this week you go over to this area and it's got this kind of architecture and government and system and problems and whatever, and it's vastly different than what's over on this side because we're just allowed to go and explore, and we have a good reason for it. Like, we have a reason for these things existing. So, you know, that's... So, and you're saying, are these based off of real cities? And I don't know how much you really... I mean, I would think you would not want them based off of real cities. They might be inspired by real cities, but I would think that would make your life harder by saying that it has to be, oh yeah, this one takes place in whatever's left of Moscow. You know, because you're desperate to draw that onion-shaped dome thing. All right. Go for it. But I don't want to, you know, the accuracy that you would need, that kind of stuff. Like, I'm just trying to think of ways of leaving us open, and also what's plausible for you to do, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that there's something in the communication that we're having problems with.
It could be.
Like, I didn't know we were actually doing an evil city, because we were talking about how we hadn't come to any conclusions. I wasn't thinking evil. As far as Thundar goes, so here's the difference for me. Thundar doesn't have to go back to the same city every time.
That's true. And I would argue...
Thundar didn't have a base of operations.
Well, I get that. That's not the part I'm pulling from Thundar. I'm not saying let's do Thundar. I'm saying...
I understand. But what I'm saying, this is why I'm talking about the cities that we're creating, okay?
Well, which city are we creating?
We're creating at least 2.
Okay.
Possibly 3. But this is the thing I'm saying, is that whatever we decide, we're going to have to stick with. We're going to box ourselves in, because that's where they're going to live. Like, whether it's Mega City and the Sovs, they both have their own cities, and Mega City looks like Mega City, and the Sov City looks like the Sov City. You know, so it's just, you want recognizable elements in anything visual. You want to be able to know where you're at when you see certain things. You don't need to say, for instance, you have a Sky Needle in the bad guy city. You don't need to have the Sky Needle in every scene, but if you start off with an establishing shot of the city, and that's in the skyline, you know the city.
Okay, and that's all true.
We're just starting out here, so we need to make some decisions. That's what I said at the beginning.
And I'm saying, okay, here's a decision. I would not base these off of any particular city. Like, if you want, you will. I understand that you need to have a design aesthetic for each place, and I understand that there has to be consistency there. And I am saying, I think it is more difficult for you to say this is a cyberpunk post-apocalyptic version of Paris. Like, then you kind of have to know where the streets of Paris are, and you have to know how far these, you know, what this building and I would avoid. Now, if you want to say, all right, this particular city, city X, is going to have big boxy buildings because it's Soviet style architecture. Okay, we can do that. And to some extent, that thing about, Thundar did not have a base of operations. Okay. So the only one that really has, the only one that's really going to box us in is the home base of operations. Because to some extent, if we stay in one area, which I think we should, that will have to remain consistent and recognizable. Whereas the other ones, if you decide, all right, we went to this city and, well, that sucked. I never want to go back there again.
How many places did they go to in Star Wars? I'm talking the original Star Wars.
And the original one, places or planets? Because
places.
Well, because
now, all right. So in Star Wars, places and planets are interchangeable. So if you want to talk about the Death Star, you can consider that a planet, or you can consider that a place. Either one's interchangeable, right? Basically, the rule of thumb is that you go to three different places. Those places are established. Once you know what Tatooine is, every other movie, Tatooine's Tatooine, and you recognize.
Right.
Once you go to Coruscant, you recognize Coruscant because it has an original aesthetic. Naboo. You have an original aesthetic, and anytime that your characters need to return to that place, you have an idea of the aesthetic. That when I say that you didn't have that with Thundar is that there's only like one season really, maybe two, because I have all of them.
And they never go back to the same spot.
Right. They never go to the same spot. Exactly. The only thing that's the same is the beginning when they show the destroyed cities. Now, I love Thundar, don't get me wrong. Like, I loved it as a kid. I still love it even for all its flaws. But the story that we've conceived so far has a certain amount of things that have to be recognizable. Even if we don't explore any of them, I would think that to make it easier as a storytelling tool, that you have a preconceived vision of the Citadel. The Citadel is maybe rusty cyberpunk looking stuff, or maybe so that's kind of what I envisioned the traveling city we were talking about looking weathered because it's traveled. It's still a writer's or a storyteller's tool that whenever you picture this traveling city, you picture kind of rust and maybe sandstorm pits in the metal, or different types of shielding. And then say the fascist city, you picture like Cobra's commander's city where there's these big old curtain walls of steel or something. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, well, that's what we're doing. That's what I was setting out to do here, was create some images, some aesthetics to look at to go, okay, this is this city. Like,
yeah, I know, but when you ask me how I would represent a fascist state,
well, because
and
let
me finish. Stop interrupting me. When you ask me how I'd represent a fascist state, and I tell you the characteristics of a fascist state, you're like, no, I need to. So you really want visuals, which is perfectly fine, and that's great.
What I asked you to start.
Right, and I'm telling you that I don't think you have to be locked into any particular style. That's all I'm getting at. Is that I can find you look at Soviet era and communist Chinese architecture. Okay. Is that you? It just got really loud and everything that's coming. Let me try it. But say something else.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just real staticky. And that got loud. That got loud real fast. So, I'm just telling you. Interesting. Sounded. I just don't want you to think you're locked into any particular style and the only one that we have to go back to, like if you decide to try something out and we decide we don't like, the home city is the only one that actually really matters. The rest of them, we never have to go back to again. We can reference them, we can go back to them. I'm saying that you don't have to worry about it as much. And I wouldn't base it off of real cities per se, because you don't want to have to worry about being that accurate. Like you can be inspired by a particular place, go for it. So if you want to design, I don't care. I mean, I don't. I just don't want you to think that you have to be locked in. And if I'm throwing out ideas about possible design ideas, it's really easy to go, yeah, I don't like that, or I don't know how to draw that, or I'm not sure I can accomplish that, or whatever. And then I'm like, all right, that's cool, move on. Like, I'm not married to anything. And I know we want to have decisions made, but I'm telling you, like, we can make decisions that aren't something that's going to be set in stone that we always have to deal with. There are areas that we're going to have to. The home city is going to have to design. Oh. Did you change? Sorry, I'm playing around with some of the settings because it's just I can really hear like your pencil and everything. And you're just staticky. Oh. Yeah. gonna be weird. Wait, no, I'm gonna keep that. Trying to figure out, like, cause you sound like one of the parents from Charlie Brown, but he's been smoking for way too long. Hey, I'm gonna mute you for a second. Because I just wanted, I'm trying to pinpoint where the sound problem is. Okay, so like I can hear myself on Twitch, but I sound normal. So now I'm going to mute me, and then I'm going to need you to talk. Okay, so I don't know what's going on, but it sounds like your mic's like, I don't know what's up. Like it's just, you sound like a bunch of eerie static. Now there are two people watching. Bitch, I'll be right back. I've returned. Best friends there. Hey, do me a favor and say something again. Nope. Swing and a miss. I was hoping, since I can clearly hear your pencil louder than normal. That it was something to do with your mic volume.
I've turned the mic volume down a couple of times now.
Well, that sounded a little bit better. Well, a lot of times it sounds like you bought the dog a chew toy.
I don't think can you hear me now.
I can hear you.
I just turned it all the way down. It's like completely bottomed.
That might be. It's gotten better. No, that wasn't better. Yeah, I can't understand anything that you're saying. It just sounds like static. I think whatever you knew about the Clintons is coming out, and they're going to cover it up by not letting you speak. And that's so weird too, because like there was a clear moment in the stream where all of a sudden, like you can, if you go back and watch, you'll see where you can just see me jerk my earbuds out because it got way too loud. And I don't. Yeah, and at that time, you just sound like you're talking through static, and I don't know. I don't know what happened, why it's doing that. Well, that was better. Okay. Well, if that's the... Oh, goodness. First and foremost. Boom. That's the way that's supposed to be. Secondly... Okay, try saying something again.
Something again.
Oh, that's perfect. That works out very well. All right, so this is the tracker guy?
Maybe.
It appears he's sniffing something.
Well, he's got it up in front of his face.
Okay.
I don't know if he's actually sniffing something or just examining it closer. Looking up from it.
All right. And
Rather, I'm just doodling anyway.
the thing going over his shoulder. What is that? Like next to his neck. I mean, I would point at it, but you're not going to see me point.
This?
Yep. That thing. What is that?
What does it look like?
Well, it's kind of tiny right now, so and Twitch is frozen. So your big fat hand is in the way now. It's like frozen on Twitch, at least for me.
I thought it was an inordinately small hand.
It was inordinately small hands. Although it doesn't look as small on my small screen. It looks normal size. It was on my big screen. It looked weird. I'm refreshing Twitch to see if your handle. There we go. So I can't tell if it's like a hose.
It's like a hose.
Okay.
Whether it be a hose or conduit, whatever.
Okay. All right.
It's just aesthetic for now because we have nothing. Just noodling around. You're being asked a question.
Sorry, I was actually doing research. Yeah, Trey, I'll be at school tomorrow. Get an idea for a name for him?
What?
Do you have an idea for a name for him?
No, I didn't come up with him. You did. I'm just noodling around.
put some pointless comments in the private chat because I thought I was good, and then I discovered I'm not. So, Comic Vine had nothing on the suggestion I put in there, and I thought I should probably do a Google search, and came up with stuff.
I'll look in a minute.
I mean, it's just. So you know how we had discussed starting off with a bit of skill porn action piece? How many panels would you give that?
What?
All right, so we had thought about starting off with a piece of what's essentially skill porn, where you show off what the character can do, and an action piece at the beginning. How many panels, how many panels would you give for that, for just that part?
I don't know because I don't know what this entails yet.
Well, okay, so the way
I was thinking, like maybe a three-page story, 3-page short to introduce it.
At the beginning, 3 pages, and is that?
No, I don't know whether that's 3 pages of 6, 9, 3. One big splash page. I hadn't gotten that far.
Okay, so
I just had an idea.
The reason why I was asking was to kind of figure out. I mean, if I know how, it's kind of like when you know how many words you're allowed to have, like a page count or whatever, or a word count.
Yeah, this is more of a page count thing, but
right. But so, and then if you figure out, all right, I want how much of a story can I tell in 3 pages, and some of that would be fluid because, like, especially if I were to just write a script for it, I would assume there would be spots where you would go, yeah, that's not going to work because of X, Y, or Z, or you'd go, I can combine these 2 things together, whatever.
Sometimes.
So I was just trying to figure out how much room I had to play around with.
Got all the room that you want to play around with.
Well, Okay, I've never done a comic book.
If it starts becoming, or you can skip a lot in a comic book, really. Hmm. So, Joe Quesada, who used to be editor-in-chief at Marvel for a while, but he was an artist, I guess, and a writer. But he came into DC, and your portfolio should probably be 3 pages. So what he said that he did to sell his 3 pages was we did Superman flying in a panel, then Superman flying on a TV in a panel, and then Lex Luthor watching Superman fly on several TVs in a panel, and him pulling a lever. So that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 panels. And then the next page, Superman is saving a cat, handing it to a little girl, and then he looks and sees something off screen and flies away. And then the next page, he fights a metal robot. Metal robot, that's redundant. Fights a robot. And
You have a bamboo robot. Come on.
probably wouldn't try to pit it against Superman if I was a super villain, super brilliant villain. Anyway, Superman beats the robot with 1 hit, and then it shows it on a TV screen with Lex Luthor slamming his fist down on the table, and that was enough to get him the job because it showed storytelling
So,
in 3 pages. So
we haven't nailed this down, and I don't. So, I mean, I've been reticent to, or reluctant, I guess, to write a script because I always feel like I got to work with you, and so then I feel like a lot of this stuff could probably be. We're like,
guess you don't have to if you want to.
no, that's not what I'm saying. Like, if we had a script, even if I worked on a script, and then we could go through and be like, all right, like no, yes.
So you don't know how comics work, right? That's essentially what you're saying, is that you're unsure of what to do because you're unsure of how they work.
Well, I just feel like it would be a lot easier for us to get more accomplished if there were, instead of worrying about possibilities, because you were talking about we need to make some decisions, and I'm like, all right, so, but I think it'd be easier if we had at least a script.
How do you have a script if you don't have those decisions made?
Well, so the idea, think of it this way. It's not that the decision is made. It's just that a decision is like.
It almost sounds like you're afraid of commitment.
No, I'm not. Actually, what I'm saying is that I'm willing to go through and say, all right, this is what I think should happen here. Like, we've discussed the character and the overall story, basically. So,
well, no, we've discussed the main character and what his goal or objective is. We have not discussed the bad guys. We have not discussed what the story is actually going to entail.
I know.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, we need the chess pieces. We need the pieces that are on the board to know what we have to play with.
Oh.
And that's where I was at the beginning of tonight. I was trying to figure out and create some chess pieces. So, long story short, what usually happens with a comic book is that you plot it before you write it. Generally, in the comics industry, you're actually talking to an editor that's going to make sure that it's acceptable content or whatever for the character. Of course, we're creating the character, so we decide that shit.
Yeah.
So we're plotting it together. That just means we need to actually spend a little bit of time together talking about where the story is going to go. We know what the objective is. We pretty much know whether or not the main guy is going to get the objective, right?
Right.
We just don't know what he's going to go through to get it, where he's going to go through it, or whatever he goes through, the costs involved. And there's a couple of elements that we've been talking about, but nobody's made any commitment to. So plotting it should be fairly simple, fairly straightforward. We need to know who the villains are. We need to know where the locations are of the events and the event list, right? And then it's scripting it from there. So plotting it out, we're only missing a couple of elements and the order of things. A general comic book usually tells its story within 22 pages to 24 pages. Graphic novels are generally 3 issues to 4 issues. So I was thinking we'd probably start with 60 pages, 64 pages, something like that. Manageable, you know. Which is why when you asked how much of an introduction piece, how much the introduction piece is going to take up, I don't have a direct answer for you. What I do have an answer for is that I don't think it's just action porn. My proposal was not to be just action porn, to be more important to the script later on.
Well, I said skill porn.
All right, whatever.
That could be different and is different with this character. And
well, what I'm saying is it's not to interrupt you, but what I'm saying it for is not just what we're talking about. There are other people. This is a spectator sport right now.
I know.
So I'm trying to include them into knowing that what I was talking about wasn't just showing off his skills. There was a purpose, an ultimate purpose, that would come into play later on. I don't want to tell what that purpose is, because that purpose should make a connection later on. if we indeed go with it.
Right. But that's I oh see, there is no conflict here because all of those things can be accomplished. But that section, I wanted to know roughly how long to make it. And I think everything you wanted can be included. And that's all I was looking for because I figured that would be that's a
Yeah, it's just a prologue. That's all.
it's in my mind because it's so much smaller then but it could be accomplished if you know what I mean like I could write something out that actually could all right and then we could go through and if we're missing any parts we can still go through fill in the parts that we're missing because I might get real general be like I need a villain here I don't know or you just might be like yeah I don't like this part makes no sense but that's okay because it's part of that's the collaborative process but by having some kind of plan even if it's just the plot of that small section we can do that
No, go ahead.
if we did if we plotted that out like you just said because we'll have even fewer characters I think it'll be shorter so there's less so not only fewer design elements that have to happen like at least fewer permanent design elements because yeah you can design a cityscape or whatever it is that we're going to do but it doesn't have to be one we go back to so I just thought we might be able to get like a section of it done and work through the process see how that works and see if there are kinks in the process and then apply that to the longer work does that make sense
It's not that it doesn't make sense or whatever. It's just that I think we're going to run into some of the same problems.
On what?
So first things, we do have to have something set in stone there because that's the beginning is taking someone from one place to another because that's what our main character does is take people from one place to another. Generally, it's the same another, right?
Okay.
It's the same place that he's taking all the people that he takes to. That's basically what his job is, to get people from point A to point B, but point B is always the same point B usually.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is that we still have to have that point B kind of settled. We don't have to have.
Yeah, that part will have to be, but that's only one city.
Hold on. And we don't even have to do the whole city. We only have to do what's applicable to that scene, to that scene.
Yeah. I agree.
And I think that's what I was talking about too. That was the whole plan today, was to try to come up with a place for point B and to come up with a place for point A out of the overall story.
That's so funny that point B is the primary spot. It just doesn't. I mean, I know what you're saying. It's just kind of funny. It's ironic. Like, point A should be the primary spot, but it's not.
No, that's the point you start off with. You go from point A to point B.
I get it. Trust me, you're making perfect sense. It's just, it shouldn't work, but it does. Like it just
Sounds funny.
Yeah, that's all. But you're making perfect sense, and I 100% agree. The reason though why I said the first initial set piece, I don't even know how. I mean, I honestly, yeah. Well, like, let's try. I'm gonna try and plot it out. Just the first part. Well, at least the section, and you can tell me if it's like too many pages or if it's wrong. Whatever.
Well, I'll put suggestions in where needed. There's a couple of ideas that I've had that I don't want to talk about on screen yet, because I don't want to end up, going around in circles on a stream.
Right.
But like I've had an idea, and I'll make a suggestion to you probably in a couple of minutes because I'll be done with the major stuff on this and probably call it. I haven't even looked at the private chat yet. Let's see.
Oh, well, yeah. Nothing that important.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter if there's a film that has the same title, because there's a lot of films that have same titles of other films that are not the same thing. What's important is that it's distinguishable from it. And if it's one word in the film title, it could be two.
Okay.
And that is enough to make it different.
Well, I don't know.
Just pointing it out, I guess.
Well, then just keep that in mind, because I think that's applicable to all kinds of things. But it's also, I guess, I'm not set in stone on anything. I always liked it. I don't know. I mean, this is the first time we've really collaborated on a single work. But like, I always think back to when my wife and I were picking out names for the boys. Both of us had infinite number of vetoes. Because
that's totally different than how we did it.
Well, that way, if you love a name, it's great and all, but it's like, well, no, like I really hate it or whatever it is, and so no, and you both have to come to something that you're going to be satisfied with, and like I love. I mean, my firstborn, I came up with his name. I walked out to my wife and I said, "What about this for a name?" She's like, "Yes, that's perfect." And I was like, "All right, sweet." That was the end of the discussion. Thaddeus, on the other hand, that one took. We fought for weeks, and it's just. But it's one of those things where it's like, I still cannot. She wanted to name him Tad. I just no. And I mean, I suppose I could have come up. Oh well, I wanted to name him Riley. No. No, I wanted to name him Reed Allen. But my wife was like, nope, and she vetoed that one. I mean, I wanted that one badly. And she's like, just absolutely no. And, I understand her reasoning for it. Whatever. But we both had to be satisfied. So having unlimited vetoes, I think, is a good thing. I just, it's one of those things where it's like you can't force anything into the situation. Like you know what I mean? Like you can, all right, no, no. So if I wanted something stupid or just something, you're like, that's just not going to work. It just physically doesn't work.
I would tell you if I thought it was stupid. I probably wouldn't say it in those words, but so I'm also of the mind that often my first reaction is no. And it takes a minute for me to see some value sometimes in someone else's viewpoint. So I've been trying a lot lately to be open to that. If that makes sense. What we did was, if it was a boy, I got first pick. If it was a girl, she got first pick. And we wrote the names down, and I did not get my original pick. She didn't like it. I got my second pick, which I knew was going to be misinterpreted as him being named after someone he wasn't named after. But by the same token, my original first name for him, so we're talking about my son Logan, my original first name for him was going to be Creedy. She didn't like it. And I accepted it, Logan was a second choice, but it wasn't after Wolverine. It was after what I had been misinformed was the actual definition of what a Logan was. But that doesn't matter because, people read into it what they read into it. The girl, we both picked the same name. Like, we had the list of names, and we were just, going down to the list of things that we thought were cool. And when my daughter's name, because we didn't know if it was going to be a boy or girl, and I don't think she wanted to find out, and I didn't care. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't matter to me whether it was a boy or girl, just so long as it's a healthy baby. And we just happened to both pick the same name. And I picked a little bit different of a spelling, and we went with that. I should say she went with that because it was really her choice. That's what we had agreed on, and if she would or wouldn't have gone with it, I was good with it because that was the agreement we made. Eli, we also both were thinking of Eli, just I was thinking of a different spelling of Eli, and she did not like that spelling, so because we went with my spelling on Kate, we went with her spelling on Eli. Like, I wasn't really that hard to get along with then. So, the type of comic book that we're making dictates some things. That's it. Just and I don't even know how much I can say that it really dictates, but it does dictate that you're not going to be using like Conan and shit like that, because this is after a time when we've kind of established naming customs, right?
Okay.
And what you're talking about is more like a code name, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to name their kid that.
No. There's more of a code name.
Right. So that's kind of where I am. I didn't think it was a bad name.
Okay.
You probably wouldn't even have liked what I was thinking when I was first started noodling around. It doesn't look like what it was originally for me, but my first thoughts on what I would have named him was like Aborigine or something like that.
Well, I kind of saw
And then
that.
I was like, that's it's probably not going to work because I don't want to offend anybody, and it's probably already something. But yeah, like I didn't think it was going to be very well received, so I didn't really care. I was just noodling around on what you were talking about, wanting as a first pass bad guy. And I just wanted to make it look like he was formidable. I wasn't overly worried about what the naming convention was or any of that. You want to go with a code name, you want to go with a real name, that's up to you. That's actually why I brought you in as a writer, is so that you could do the heavy lifting there. Because I'd be doing the heavy lifting here. And
I think the code name aspect it's a cooler aspect. I mean, some of them don't need it, but I got an idea for it. Well, Rich, it's midnight, man, and I have to go to work tomorrow.
And you're not going to be there Saturday.
Probably not.
Well, I wasn't asking because I was pretty much guessing that you weren't going to be there. You said something about that. So what my thinking was is that either if I stream at all Saturday, it's going to be something else, something different. Like when I sat down to do the cityscape, I didn't know if you were going to show up when I planned to do that because we hadn't talked over the last couple of days. So I didn't know where we were at. So I guess what will happen is that I'll message you tomorrow.
Right.
Or you can message me tomorrow.
Okay.
And just like there were some things I wanted to pitch for what I was thinking about the 3-page intro. It's not very much, but it's enough to take a few minutes. So
Okay.
You'll just let me know when it's good, or I'll just throw something in the Discord chat and you can read it at your leisure.
Okay.
And you can message me back if you have an answer or have a particular feeling about something that I've said, or I'll just see you Tuesday.
Okay.
So, yeah, if you're heading out, then have a good night.
See you guys. Bye.
Yep. All right, that's it for tonight, I guess. I'll do a close-up. Oh, now people are showing up, right? Hello, Megapedia. How are you tonight? Thank you. This is a villain for a comic that we are trying to create on stream. Hello, Kentucky Fried Preacher. I was just about to sign off because my co-host did, and it's midnight here. And I have a special needs kid that's going to be getting up at probably less time than it takes for me to shut down and get a half a night's sleep. But thank you all for stopping in. Thank you guys for talking. Usually we do Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I don't think we're going to do Saturday. If so, I'm going to do Saturday. It's going to be a different thing. Maybe I'm going to do a painting or close-up of a character sketch or something like that, because we've been working together on this, and he's not going to be available, so it's just going to be me. So yeah, welcome to stop back in and share anything. Like if you want to share your channel, you want to share your work, links to your Instagram or any of that, you're welcome to. You have a great night as well. Thank you for stopping in, and good night. God bless, and much love.